that stands between Pakistan and China. And as of 2016, which is the last data that I was able to find, 280 climbers out of 400 that have attempted to climb the mountain have actually died. By the same token, these people died not on the way up, but on the way down. Now, when it comes to Mount Everest, we do have a lot more information along those lines. And what we have been able to find is that 70% of all the people that have died on Mount Everest have died on the way down. And that's a major problem. So when I try to make an analogy between mountain climbing and retirement planning, I like to think of it this way. If I were to try to climb either K2 or Mount Everest, obviously the first thing I'm going to try to do is make sure I get in really good climbing shape. I'm going to get on a very strict diet. I'm going to work out daily. I'm going to do exercises that are going to help me tremendously to get to the top of the mountain. And then I'm going to try to buy the best equipment possible. I'm going to start to climb and train and exercise on smaller mountains as I prepare for the challenges ahead. Now, if you're going to take a trip to climb either one of these mountains, it's going to cost you anywhere between $45,000 and $55,000 in order for you to be able to pay your way through it. And it may take you 2 to 3 months of travel and preparation before you can actually attempt a climb to the mountain. The other thing you're going to have to pay attention to is, well, would I have to hire a guide? And the answer is yes. Now, in mountain climbing, especially when you go to K2 or you go to Mount Everest, they're called Sherpas. So you're going to hire a Sherpa who understands and has probably gone up and down that mountain several times, and you're going to have to hire a Sherpa. But if at the point in time that you're interviewing a Sherpa, and you were to ask a Sherpa, will they be able to take you to the top of the mountain? If that Sherpa were to answer to you in the following way, yes, I can take you to the top of the mountain, but I'm not certain that I can bring you back down safely, the question that I have for all of you on this podcast would be, would you hire that guide or Sherpa to take you to the top of the mountain? Well, the answer is probably not. The same thing happens in retirement planning. You know, as you are working through your working years, 30, 40 years, as you put money away and start thinking about getting to the top of the mountain, which would be the day that you retire, then the next side of that is coming down the mountain throughout your retirement years. So you go from accumulation, going up the mountain, to distribution, coming down the mountain. Now, if I were your financial advisor, and you and I were having this conversation 20, 25 years ago, and I said to you, you know, John, Mary, I think I can get the two of you to the top of the mountain in retirement. I just don't know if I'm going to be able to deliver on my promise that you would never run out of money before you run out of life throughout your retirement years. I doubt it very much that any of you on this podcast would hire me as your financial and economics advisor. Well, those are the things that are very critical when it comes to retirement planning. And one of the challenges that I have with many of my clients today and in the past is that everyone thinks that you're going to hang it up, you're going to retire, and life goes on, and there are no changes or diversifications or anything that you have to do other than waking up on the green side of the grass every single morning and enjoy your day. What people fail to understand is that economics change, things change in our lives, in our families. Health plays a major role, preponderance to invest. Issues like taxation and inflation that we have very little control over come in and make a major impact in what we do. So instead of coming down the mountain straight down, we have to be zigzagging from one side to the other as we try to accomplish the ultimate goal, which is making it safely all the way down the mountain, all the way down through our retirement years. So that brings me to the issue of economic straddles. And an economic straddle is nothing more and nothing less than a combination of economic models and financial products that would help each and every one of us in retirement achieve our goals. There is no perfect product in the marketplace. The financial services industry has done a fairly good job in diversifying and creating different models and portfolio capable of helping Americans and retirees today, but they have never ever been able to come up with a perfect product in order to accomplish all of the different goals and objectives that most of us have as we prepare to retire. So a retirement distribution straddle is the identification of specific products that will work well together in order to accomplish a given goal. So you get the best of certain products and the best of other products, and you bring them in together to try to build an ultimate goal that is going to be feasible and factually beneficial to all of us in retirement. At the end of the day, we need to understand that single financial products will not provide ultimate success. Interest-only withdrawal, as many traditional financial planning firms introduce clients to, is guaranteed to fail. Savings rates are not sufficient to meet income requirements. So I'm going to give you an exercise and an example. Now, it doesn't have to be this number per se. It could be any given number from a business standpoint. But I am going to use two couples that are retiring this year. And they both have $1 million in retirement assets or disposable assets. Now, it could be a 401k, it could be mutual funds, it could be stocks, it could be bonds, it could be a number of different things. But I'm just going to use $1 million at this point in time just for exercise purposes. It could be $500,000, it could be $250,000, it could be $10 million. The numbers don't matter. So we're going to use family A and family B. Family A, husband and wife. Family B, husband and wife as well. Family A has $1 million of assets. They had investments in mutual funds, and they both hit the age of 65 at the same time, so they were the same age. Now, in a traditional world where you may be receiving a 6% interest rate on that $1 million, which is not something that is foreseeable today or in the near future anyways because of the sensitivity to interest rate calculations, this $1 million would generate for the client $60,000 every single year. Based on their tax bracket, I'm using a 28% tax bracket. They would pay $16,800 in taxes, and they would have a net income of $43,200. Not a lot, but is better than what many of them would be able to get today, as a matter of fact. But one of the major issues with Family A is that they owned life insurance until they reached the age 65. In other words, they had term insurance to age 65. And then they decided to cancel at age 65 because they had already reached retirement and there was no need, according to their thought process, for any additional life insurance. Now remember that during your accumulation years, life insurance protects your life, and in case you don't make it, so your family can be fully protected with the tax-free insurance proceeds. Now, life insurance at age 65, or once the clients retire, not only do they provide family protection, but they also provide asset protection, and I'm going to walk you through that right now. Now, The problem with Family A is that because they only have $1 million to their name and they have no life insurance in place, they're obligated to live off the interest only. So if the interest rates are at 6% that they can safely obtain, then they're generating $60,000 in income, $43,200 net after taxes. And in a period of 20 years, between the ages of 65 and 84, they were able to pull out $1.2 million. They paid $336,000 in taxes, and they netted $864,000, and they still have the $1 million in place. Now, that's all well and good, but we know that retirement planning is not a linear calculation because things change. Now, this same client today or a family today with $1 million in a portfolio, if they try to obtain a CD, they may barely get a 2% return. So then you go from $60,000 to $20,000. This family may have no choice but to start to invade principal because the interest alone will not be sufficient. Not if it's even 3% or 4%. So now the clients, instead of generating $60,000, they're barely generating $30,000 to $40,000, and we haven't even factored taxes at this point in time. So interest rate calculations for this family becomes very, very critical. And the most important issue here to remember is they have very little leverage. And they have very little leverage because of the fact that instead of creating a retirement straddle, they decided to choose one product, whether that was a mutual fund or 401k or whatever it may have been. At the end of the day, that product has to do a number of things. It has to provide sufficient income for both husband and wife throughout their retirement years. That income needs to stay at par or ahead of inflation for 20 to 30 years down the line. Once one of the family members passes on, the income has to continue to provide a survivor benefit to the surviving spouse for as long as he or she lives. So at the end of the day, there's a tremendous amount of pressure being placed on that one asset and that one investment that it's almost an impossibility for anyone to be able to succeed from a business standpoint and retirement distribution perspective. Now, Family B is similar to Family A, except that Family B, instead of owning term life insurance, they decided to own permanent life insurance. So by the time they got to the age of 65, either their life insurance policies was paid up, or they had very few years left to pay for the policy, but they still had the $1 million in whole life insurance or permanent life insurance, which now becomes asset insurance. And what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is the following. If you have $1 million in a mutual fund portfolio or in a 401k, and in addition to that, you have a guaranteed $1 million life insurance policy set aside in case either you die or your spouse dies, then now you have a lot more leverage with the current $1 million that you have for retirement than you would otherwise. And what I mean by that is that instead of being like Family A, where you have no choice but to pull interest only, you now have the ability as Family B to not only be able to pull interest out of the account, and I'm using the same 6% so we can keep everything equally along those lines, but you can also give yourself the liberty of penetrating and taking out principal as well. So if you do a pay down calculation,